Good afternoon, everybody. The Senate Finance Committee is now in session, and we have a hearing with about 8 bills to be heard this afternoon. Most of these bills are sponsor only, so it should go fairly quickly. And remember, once the hearing is over, a half hour or so later, we will be voting. We'll start with House Bill 1342. The Chairman of Ways and Means Committee.
Hello, 1342,
Secretary,
Madam
yes.
Chair.
Secretary Schultz, okay.
Hello, good afternoon, Chairman Kelly and the rest of the committee. It's great to be here today. For the record, my name is Kelly Schultz and Secretary of Maryland's Department of Commerce, and I will be testifying in support of House Bill 1342. Also want to make sure that everybody knows that I am joined today by Darla Garrett, from our team, who is here to answer any specific programmatic questions that may come up during the conversation. This is a departmental bill that makes one important change to our Partnership for Workforce Quality, or we call it our PWQ program. This change will make the program more effective by aligning it more closely with the needs of our business community and will help us connect more Marylanders with good jobs. The PWQ program was first established in 1989. It went dormant for a period of time, but was reactivated by the budget appropriation in fiscal year 2018. It provides matching reimbursable grants to help Maryland manufacturing and technology companies cover the cost of new training for their existing employees. Since its inception, the program has provided nearly $39 million to support more than 99,000 employee training slots in Maryland companies. The intent was these companies stay competitive by making it easier for them to modernize operations, upgrade equipment, develop new management practices, and improve their efficiency. But right now, it's only for existing employees. And one of the main concerns that we've been hearing from businesses for some time is that they have jobs available, but they can't find qualified and trained new workers to fill these positions. House Bill 1342 expands the eligibility of the program to also include training for new employees. We have businesses who are ready to hire and we have people who are ready to work, but there's a training gap that continues to keep them apart. This change will help to bridge that gap. This is particularly important for workforce development in today's high-tech economy. There's no additional funding attached to this proposal. It will help businesses grow and will allow more Marylanders to not only find high-tech quality jobs, but to learn skills they'll carry with them throughout their careers. And with that, Madam Chair, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 1342, and always happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, when you refer to the businesses, what is the definition of the businesses? Can it be a manufacturing organization that technically is like a nonprofit but provide manufacturing services?
They would have to be performing a skill related to manufacturing or a high-tech position, but I can always ask Darla Garrett, who's on my team, to see if an association. I would hate to answer that question on a technicality, Senator.
No problem.
Are there any other questions?
I think she was
here, I think that.
Yeah. So the PWQ statute does allow for associations, for the secretary to grant money to an association that's a nonprofit. For example, Maryland World Class Consortia is a recipient of a PWQ grant, and they use the funds to train manufacturers in lean techniques. And they've been very successful at training these small manufacturers using the PWQ money.
No, thank you. That's helpful. One of the organizations that I was curious about benefited from the COVID money that Commerce had, and it's called the Emmett Center. They actually manufacture clothing and stuff like that using technology. So I don't think that they have a for-profit arm, but they do provide workforce development. So I was curious if that would be something. If I could just follow up, Ms. Garrett, at a later time, just so I can get clarity on this specific organization and others like it.
I'm sure the secretary will be happy to have a more extensive discussion with you, maybe online.
Absolutely. We will definitely connect, Senator.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going next to House Bill 1213, Delegate Queen. Delegate, you just need to unmute yourself. Delegate, you're not unmuted. Unmute yourself. We need you to unmute yourself. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Okay, you ready for me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. All right, good afternoon. Chairman Kelly, Vice Chair Feldman, and members of Finance Committee. HB 1213, this bill addresses inequities in access to capital, especially for home purchases due to the method of determining creditworthiness. And so in Maryland, the average home ownership is about 66.7%, whereas home ownership for Blacks is about 51.8%. For Hispanics, 52.9%, as compared to whites, which is 76.8%. And so we find that the credit rating for Blacks is lower than in other races. So we find that alternate ways of evaluating creditworthiness can improve this disproportionate rate, as highlighted by an article in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which outlines that alternate methods can benefit the person requesting credit. And so we know home ownership has many benefits in our community. And so because of that, we want to see that a new way or alternate ways of evaluating creditworthiness be considered. This bill passed unanimously from House Economic Matters Committee and overwhelmingly passed the House chambers. So we seek a favorable recommendation for this bill to make home ownership a dream for all Marylanders. The bill was worked on with the Bankers Association and the credit union to come up with language that was acceptable to all of the entities involved. So we seek a favorable report on this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Queen? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, we're going next to Delegate Tipke, House Bills.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's great to be with you all. It's great to actually see you. I'm sure you hear that a lot. We often don't see each other during session very much, but it's especially true this year. So I miss you. This House Bill 601 is the result of a Supreme Court decision that took place earlier last year. It was a unanimous decision. And what the decision relates to is state regulation of pharmacy benefit managers. As you know, over the years, we have worked together to pass some regulations related to how pharmacy benefit managers behave. But the laws that we've passed have only impacted a small percentage of policies because it was believed that PBMs were not subject to ERISA. So there was this Supreme Court case, and it was unanimous. There was two opinions, one from a more liberal judge and one from one of the more conservative judges, both singing the same tune, that PBMs are not ERISA exempt, and basically the laws that we've passed in Maryland could impact all of the policies in all the different groups. This bill will expand just a small percentage of our regulations to our laws to PBMs in self-pay, small group, all the different areas that traditionally have been not impact it. We worked with the opposition on the bill, the PCMA represented by Mike Johansson and members from the association directly. They argued that Rutledge, the Supreme Court case, only impacted issues related to reimbursement. We didn't agree with them on that, but in the spirit of working together, this bill only impacts issues related to reimbursement. However, we received a letter from the Attorney General, which has been submitted to the committee, Maryland's Attorney General, who, by the way, signed on to an amicus brief in support of the Rutledge case. You have a written letter from the Attorney General saying that basically all of our laws and regulations as it relates to PBMs could be expanded. However, what's before you is a much more limited and narrow application of that. So the bill obviously is very much supported by the independent pharmacies throughout Maryland. You have testimony from many of them, and this is their top priority. It passed the House committee unanimously, and it passed the House of Delegates all in favor but one, but I'd suspect that one had other issues unrelated to this bill. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the delegates? Well, this sounds like great news. We'll have to look into it and learn more what else it can be applicable to, because the PBMs have been a real problem.
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention one thing. In the bill, we instruct the MIA to let us know before next session what they believe would be appropriate for us to change in the law for further expansion, going into other areas beyond just reimbursement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no questions, then that's the end of the hearing on House Bill 601. Sounds like an excellent bill. Okay, we're going next to House Bill 44. Delegate Frazier Hidalgo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for taking the time to hear my bill. House Bill 44 passed out of the House side, passed out of Environment and Transportation in the House side to be where it is here. Now, you have seen this bill in various forms over the years. Every couple of years, we need to do this. This is basically the Clean Cars Act, and it is to help promote the transition to sustainable transport. In 2011, we signed an MOU with about 11 other states to pursue that transition. And every couple of years, we put some money in to give some tax credits and incentives for electric vehicle purchases and charging stations. And in this particular year, last year, the bill was COVIDed, so it never made it out of the House. And this year, you have before you this bill, House Bill 44, which is amended. It's a little bit different than it originally came out, than it was originally put in. But the bill essentially provides for people who have already purchased their vehicles because the money ran out, and it makes them whole. So it keeps the promise that the General Assembly and the state has made year over year. So it takes care of the people in the past, and it also provides for some incentives moving forward for charging stations. It does not, however, provide for incentives moving forward for electric cars at the moment, and that's just because there seems to be some conflict between the federal dollars that are coming down for how tax credits are viewed. And this bill, there may be some conflict. So in an effort to be very, very prudent, we decided to pull that part out of the bill until or unless we can figure out moving forward how that works with federal dollars to make sure there is no conflict. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, just real quick, how is this bill funded?
It's funded through SEIF, the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. It's the same way it's been funded year over year, from the governor's office to the General Assembly, year over year. Okay,
and then just why I'm asking, there's been a number of bills that we've passed this year, considered this year, that draw from the SEIF funds. Is this in consideration of all of the other bills? I mean, is there enough money to do what's been passed as well, or is this going to become at the end, we've passed a whole bunch of bills pulling out from the C fund and find that there's not enough money for them
It
all.
should not. It should not, Senator. And the reason I say that is because in order to make sure that that did not happen, I consulted on my side with not only the chair of ENT, but also the chair of ECM that's here today, as well as the chair of appropriations. And all of them came together to help me figure out the best way to fund this bill so that there were no conflicts. And all three of those chairs came up with this solution.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you very much, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the
Are there
question.
any other questions? All right, if not, that's the testimony on House Bill 44. And we're going next to the House Bill 832, same sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, again for your time and your indulgence. It's interesting that the chair of ECM is on this Zoom because the chair of ECM was so helpful on this particular bill. So House Bill 832 establishes a pilot program to incentivize the purchase of electric school buses by our school systems across the state. Essentially, the issue is that if we want to move from diesel school buses to electric school buses, there is a cost difference that unfortunately is not easily borne by the jurisdictions. So this bill instructs the PSC to allow the utilities to come up with a rebate program and to help bridge the gap and for the purchase difference between a diesel fueled school bus and an electric school bus, so that the jurisdictions can make that transition and ensure that there are no costs out of pocket for those jurisdictions and they can make that transition. The reason that this bill is so vitally important is for three reasons. The first reason is that the average kindergarten or first grader is at the exact right height of the exhaust pipe on a school bus, particularly a diesel school bus. So those fumes are basically inhaled directly into our 5- and 6-year-old bodies, as well as all the teachers and staff that are out helping to get the kids off and on the buses every day. So that's the first thing. It's a public policy. When you look at it from a public health perspective, that's a huge piece, protecting our kids. The second part of this is it also helps on the environmental side because it transitions to electric, so we don't worry about spewing the diesel fumes and causing additional greenhouse gases. So that's the second piece. So we have a public health piece, and then we have an environmental piece. And last but not least, which is why I think that this bill is before your committee, and it's complicated, which is why I think it was duly assigned in the House, is because the third piece, which is huge, is it allows the utilities to come up with a pilot program to allow for vehicle to grid or V2G, so they can charge those school bus batteries during the day, and then in the afternoons or the evenings on those really scorching hot summer days when everybody's turning on their air conditioning, instead of burning fossil fuels to generate that electricity, they will be able to pull from the batteries on these school buses. There was nobody against this bill. There was nobody in opposition to the bill. And with that said, I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions? Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, same question. Who pays for this one?
So this instructs the PSC to allow the utilities to have an increase for the ratepayers. So that ratepayer increase is very, very minimal. I can give you that number if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd be interested because I'm not sure how you determine that number already, but I'd like to know what the suggestion is.
That's great. And that's why the number is a variance. The utilities came up with the idea that it could be anywhere from 15 cents to 40 or 45 cents per month.
Okay.
And again, it's a pilot program, so it only goes for 4 to 5 years and then has to be renewed, or depending on how. A big part of this is for them to try and figure out how to make this work. There have been other jurisdictions around the country that have done this as well.
Can we agree, whether it's 15 cents or 45 cents, that it would be $50 million to the ratepayers?
Yes. Well, okay. If those jurisdictions take full advantage of it, yes, that would be,
okay.
That would be correct. In other words, if those utilities provide the maximum number of If a specific utility provides a maximum number of school buses, yes, it could be that high.
So instead of having the ratepayers subsidize this, why haven't we put this legislation in place since it's a pilot program and said that the counties could pay for this?
Because I think some of the utilities cross a variety of counties. They're not just in one county, as well as some of the counties have their own school buses. Some of them have other school bus contractors they work with, and this allows for maximum flexibility moving forward so that the utilities can work with any of them.
Well, it actually kind of does a little bit of what you're saying too. It would allow one county to participate in this program, but ratepayers from multiple counties would have to subsidize this, right?
I guess you could say that it does that, but I think it's important to realize that, kids are kids, whether they're in one county or another, and inhaling exhaust fumes from a diesel bus is not in the interest of a child or an adult, no matter which jurisdiction they happen to be in, number one. Number two, those diesel fumes, while they're not doing while they're doing that direct damage to kids and adults' lungs at the point of burning, those fumes also blow over county lines to other jurisdictions and provide public health concerns for kids and adults in other jurisdictions. And thirdly, the electrons that are generated by a company or generated or used by a school bus battery crosses all those lines. That that the electrons the electrons could come from one county and end up on the other side of the state or something. So.
No, I do understand that there has the potential to be benefits from this. It's just, again, the question of why we decide to make policy and force the ratepayers to pay for it. We just had your bill before with the Clean Cars Act, and we elected, again, although it's ratepayer money, it's now in control of the state through the SEEF program to pay for that. And it seems to be, and again, not just your bill, delegate, that we struggle when we ask the state to pay something. First thing we hear about is what's the fiscal note on it, and if the fiscal note is too much, then the policy doesn't go forward. Then the next step is we ask counties to pay for things. I have a bill that looks to exempt community solar projects from personal property tax. Well, lo and behold, MACO and MML come out and adamantly opposed again to that because they don't want to see any money from the counties go out or lose money. But nobody's sitting here defending the input of the ratepayers. And so we've looked at the state, look at the county. No, finally, let's just put it on the back of the ratepayers. They can subsidize this because they don't have the type of input on these types of decisions. So that's why I get concerned about these things that just get pushed off to the ratepayers. Another 15 cents here, 45 cents here. At the end of the day, this is still $50 million. Let me ask another question. The utilities are a big part of this as well, too. Obviously, they're in favor of this because this is, in a sense, a grant program from them, right? The way the PSC will probably work this out. They will pay the cost difference to the counties or whoever takes place in the pilot program of the differential between the diesel bus and the electric bus, right? But then at the same time, the utility companies will be able to bring that on as an asset, right? And through that asset is the way that they will then, one, make a rate of return on this. So obviously that's why we see great support from the investor-owned utilities. And then that becomes rolled into the next rate case, which then again forces the ratepayers to have to pay for this. Is that what the investor-owned utilities talked about, or why did they talk about this and being in such favor of this bill?
Well, actually, Senator, all very good questions. Thank you for all of them. I will tell you, I actually went to the utilities because this has been done in other jurisdictions.
Sure.
So I went to the utilities to talk to them about this because I think it is extraordinarily important. I mean, in the end, the V2G technology that we're talking about, as this has a time limit on it and it's a pilot, doesn't necessarily have to be renewed if it doesn't work. But I will say that this, in the end, should reduce ratepayer cost at the end of the day. I mean, we're talking about vehicle to grid technology. We're talking about the ability to store electricity on huge battery packs, lithium ion battery packs, and then put them back in the grid when it is the grid use is the highest and the cost for those electrons are the highest. So in the end, this is an investment which will yield multiple dividends. The first dividend, like I said, cleaning out kids' lungs, not having them. The second dividend is, of course, the environmental piece. And the third dividend is, in the end, we're talking about a case in which the rates for those electrons are going to decrease because we are using that through renewables and through battery backups and,
Right.
and using lithium-ion batteries to back up the grid. And it also diversifies our grid in a huge way. We don't have the diversification that we should.
So with you taking a look at the V2G technology and this being a pilot program, have we asked the Public Service Commission to make sure that there's no net increase to the ratepayers? And in other words, this pilot cannot go forward unless a demonstrated no net increase to the ratepayers has been proven?
No, not to my knowledge. And I will tell you, Senator, I completely understand what your line. I get it.
Mhm.
The only thing that I would say, Senator, which I think is incredibly important, is that we have become accustomed. We have become accustomed in the last 100 years of burning fossil fuels without taking into consideration the true cost. And so somebody has to come up with the cost. And this is an elegant solution as any. I had a carbon pricing bill and I couldn't get it out of the House side. I think you may have had a similar bill sponsored by Senator Cramer on this side. But the fact of the matter is that we are heavily polluting the world. We are putting our kids' public health at risk. And the idea that we can't pass it because we can't afford to have a ratepayer increase by potentially a few cents. Like how do we?
Delegate,
and Senator, I get it. Like
it's not just the ratepayer though, Delegate. I mean, this bill could have easily been drafted that the state pays for it, right? I mean, it could have been easily drafted that the county wants to participate in this program, that they pay for it and they recognize the cost benefits of using less electricity because of V2G technology. But that's not how it was written. And that's what my concern is, that when we can't get a bill through because of the fiscal note, or we can't get a bill through because MML or MACO come in opposing it, we go to a bill that just says, hey, you know what, the ratepayers can take care of this. And for all the reasons that you said, which may be valid, but those were also valid for the state and they choose not to. They were also valid for the counties. They choose not to. But the ratepayers, they have no say in the matter. And so we pass off a $50 million increase to ratepayers without any input from them at all. And that's my concern about that, Delegate. So,
Okay.
Senator,
Well, we don't want it to be a debate. I think you asked your questions and you've answered, and I think we get the point.
okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very quick because I'll have to leave shortly to go to the Ways and Means Committee. And listening to my good friend Senator Hershey go on for quite a while, I'll be much briefer. Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo, pleasure to see you as always, sir. And I think you were quickly getting to the point that I was going to raise in response to the concerns that Senator Hershey was raising, is that, in fact, the fossil fuel emissions coming from these diesel buses does cost our environment, and every one of the residents of our state and the adjoining states, millions, tens of millions of dollars in pollution and environmental destruction. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Senator Cramer, that is.
And the fact of the matter is the significant pollution that these diesel buses are causing costs every one of our residents tens of millions of dollars in public health consequences like asthma and heart disease and lung disease. Would that not be an accurate assertion?
That is exactly accurate, Senator.
All right, thank you. And I just got the call to go to Ways and Means. I'm glad that opportunity to speak with you. I'll be back shortly, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. If there are no other questions on this bill, Then we're going to Delegate Chairman Davis on House Bill 561. I believe you have selected a designee, or are you going to do
Thank
it?
you. Thank you.
No, Madam Chair, on 561, can I let the designee handle that one, please?
Okay, very good. Then that would be Sen Kenner.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good
Shall
afternoon.
I proceed?
Yes, sure.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to appear today. Thank you to Chairman Davis for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. House Bill 561 in its current form will add wastewater thermal energy as a renewable energy source under the Maryland Renewable Portfolio Standard. Wastewater thermal energy is a new and growing source of renewable energy. In short, it uses wastewater in our sewers and at our wastewater treatment plants as an efficient source of thermal energy for building heating and cooling, domestic hot water, or any other reasonably low to moderate temperature heating or cooling application. The efficiency can be great, both in terms of energy savings and in terms of cost. The energy savings come from the fact that wastewater is relatively warm in the winter and relatively cool in the summer. Thus, in principle, the scientific principle behind wastewater thermal energy is identical to that behind geothermal energy. We use a relatively neutral temperature resource to improve the efficiency of our building heating and cooling. Because it ultimately relies on a heat pump, it is 100% electric and does not involve any direct fossil fuel combustion. We are happy to say that in Washington, D.C., we have been the national leader on this subject. We have 2 buildings that rely on wastewater thermal energy for their heating and cooling right now and have for up to 2 years. We believe Maryland should take the lead in becoming the first state to recognize this source of renewable energy by passing House Bill 561. Right now, there are no such systems in the state of Maryland, but the potential is vast. Every wastewater treatment plant, every sewage system could take advantage of this source of energy to make our buildings more efficient and potentially save money at the same time. By recognizing it under the RPS, Maryland will send a strong signal to the building industry that the time for this technology has come and help incentivize its growth on a similar state to the other sources of renewable energy that are already recognized under the Renewable Portfolio Standard. There's a lot more to say, but I understand that the committee is trying to keep things moving along briefly, so I will end there and answer any questions that the senators may have.
Yeah, I do have one. There's some other states that you could cite which have gone in this direction.
Only the District of Columbia.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions?
Madam Chair,
Senator
I had a
Feldman.
quick one. Yeah, Mr. Kenner, just real quick, I understand from the floor of the House, this bill came from the House Economic Matters Committee, and I understand that on the floor there was a lot of support from the delegates from the Eastern Shore, specifically delegates Ahrens and Mouts. Is that just really more for the benefit of Senator Hershey? Is that the case? They both voted yes on that bill?
Yes, that's exactly right. We had consulted. One of the most exciting potential places for applications of this technology is in Easton, Maryland, where there is an integrated power, water, and telecommunications utility. Easton Utilities is one of the. It's a small utility, but it is one of the more adept at integrating different systems. So that happens to be within Delegate Mouts' district, and we spoke with him in advance of the bill coming before both the Economic Matters Committee and the full House. And I'm happy to say that he supported us in both places. Delegate Ahrens voted in favor of the bill in the House as well. That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make that, get that point on the record, the strong support from the Eastern Shore for this legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Thanks so very much. That ends the testimony on that bill. And now we're going to Chairman Davis for House Bill 890.
Good evening, or good afternoon, boy. Wishful thinking on my part. I tell you what, I've got a nice long speech that my staff wrote. I'll put it on my letterhead and you all can read it anytime you want until your heart's content. What I'm going to do is read just 3 bullet points, Madam Chair, and then I want to say a word about opposition to the bill, and then I'm done. I will get out of your way. First of all, this, you all know what Stride is. We don't need to go through that. But this sort of the change I'm seeking is this. Under a traditional rate plan, a company whose Stride expenses reaches $1 a month during a year would reach the $2 cap in year 2. The company would then file a rate case to reset the surcharge and continue to invest $1 per month into that 3rd year. But under a 3-year multi-year plan, the cap would be reached before the company has an opportunity to reset the surcharge. And so without this legislation, a company would be required to cut needed spending for natural gas infrastructure replacement by 1/3 over the life of the multi-year rate plan. Those are the points. But this is what I want to say about it. And you'll hear opposition to the bill, but I think we can just cut right to the chase. I've taken a look and I've seen the opposition, and I will say this, and I have a great deal of respect for their opinion, but they're nothing if they're not consistent. They oppose the original Stride plan because, look, all Stride is this. It's not a new tax or anything like that. What it essentially is you're getting a portion of the money that they would be allowed to get under a rate case anyway. They're getting that up front, very small fractional amount. It helps with things like financing, but more importantly, it enables them to be able to get started on that work sooner, to do all of the needed infrastructure replacement that we all know is a problem. Aging infrastructure is a problem throughout the country. So we know what Stride is. I don't need to get any further than that. But what we, for whatever reason, the people that you'll hear are the people that are opposed, are the same people who opposed it originally. And it worked so well, despite those concerns, that we're actually, the Public Service Commission has authorized the second 5-year proposal. So we went through a 5-year, phase, and then they got a second one that was authorized by the Public Service Commission. A couple of years ago, you all may recall, I was before you with the bill dealing with alternative rate making. Same folks, same opposition. What it comes down to this, we can hear a lot, you'll hear a lot, but this is what it comes down to. These folks believe in the historical test year way of doing it, which is you do all the work, you file the rate case, we see what happens. We see what the Public Service Commission approves. The reality is very few people do it that way anymore. As I testified on the alternative rate making plan, 38 states were doing some sort of multi-year plan. That's how it is now. That's the 21st century. That's the way we're doing it. It's being done in conservative states. It's being done in blue states, all of those kinds of things. That's where we are now. So all this really does is modernize the Stride to conform to the way we do multi-year plans as proved by the Public Service Commission. They still do the same safeguards, going back, reviewing, making sure that prudently incurred costs did occur. And if they did not, they would deduct it out of a future rate case or future rate plan. So there is no risk. And I'll just close by saying, God bless them. They do not like anything but the historical test case, period, end of story. That, if there were any problems that was going on with Stride, we would have heard from the Public Service Commission. They would not continue doing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't heard any of that. I'm done.
Okay, we got a couple of questions. Senator Bottle and then Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chairman Davis, thank you for the presentation. So if I understand this correctly, it would be a multi-year plan, but it would be like a set rate over multi-years, right? From the fiscal note?
It just allows it to get, and there will be people that can probably state it clearer if I'm not doing it correctly. I believe Charles Washington and from Baltimore Gas and Electric, and Brian Smith from Washington Gas and Light, they will follow. But yeah, it's essentially what you're saying. It just allows for it to get reset because multi-year is over a 3-year plan, and they would hit that $2 cap before the 3-year plan is up, and therefore it would have to cut off until that they would have to stop the additional work until after that 3-year plan is up, and then it would reset.
Mr. Chairman, what are the funds used for? Why are these important?
They're used to do pipe replacement. We've heard so much, as we know, about pipe bursting and all those kinds of things. Well, this would help to accelerate. They're doing it anyway, but this would help to accelerate some of those pipe replacement plans. And in some cases, it's doing it by 5, 7, and even 10 years sooner. But again, the important point to note is that all of these costs, they would be getting them back, and they're going to get them back. It's just a matter of, do they get some of the money up front so that they can accelerate it, or do they have to wait until after they've done it and gone through, I guess the traditional plan is what the opponents are pushing on it. But these are prudently incurred costs, and that's the term we always hear from the Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, thank you as well. And I'll go back to say that I did support this in your committee when I was on ECM. And again, I think the important part was that this was an aging infrastructure that we all agreed needed to be repaired and replaced. But one of the things that we also agreed upon and we liked was the transparency of this. The fact that Stride is a specific line item on your bill, and we put a cap in place. My question is, the cap is now, if we go forward with this, is starting to become somewhat meaningless, right? Because in a sense, the amount of money can be shown on the bill. Let's say, I think the fiscal note says like $1.64 for Washington Gas. But then once they go to a rate case, they roll all those expenses back in. And in a sense, they can start fresh again with a new, going up to a new cap. Is that right? So we've kind of found a way to exceed the $2 rate cap, but we are doing it through including those costs in the rate making. Is that right?
It sounds like there's a lot right to what you're saying, but this is the thing, Senator Hershey, that I would emphasize, and I don't mean to be redundant on it. All of this work, again, is prudently incurred costs. So every bit of it, the ratepayers would be paying for it. Every single solitary thing, as long as the Public Service Commission finds that it was a prudently incurred cost. So if they did something frivolous or whatever, they wouldn't get that back. But this has enabled us to get ahead of the game. And I think, the folks behind me will come with the numbers, how many more pipe replacements and so forth has occurred. So I think what the issue really is, it's not really a dollar and cents thing, because that money is going to be paid. That money's gone. It's just a matter of, do you do it up front, or do you do it after the test case has been done? The key question, I think, for us is it important to get these pipes replaced as quickly as possible? Do we have enough of a backlog that we're essentially saying, yes, let's get to this work, save on some of those financing costs because you're able to do it up front, which also saves the ratepayers money, and can we get this done? So I'm not going to dispute what you're saying. Maybe somebody behind me will, but I'm not going to dispute what you're saying. All I would say, or my only real point in all of this, is these are all costs, every dime of it. If it was prudently incurred, we'd have to pay it. It's just a matter of when.
I agree with you there, Mr. Chairman. I just saw that the bill originally had an increase to the cap, but in a sense, there really doesn't seem to be a cap anymore. The expenses are what they are. We appreciate the Public Service Commission going through each one of these projects to make sure that they're valid. But that was my only question. So I appreciate your comments, and Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, then that ends the testimony on Senate Bill 890. Okay, Charles Washington.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
I'm going to depart, guys.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly and members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Charles Washington, here on behalf of BGE in support of House Bill 890, because simply put, Stride is working. Since 2014, BGE has replaced more than 300 miles of obsolete pipeline. That work has created 600 jobs, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions equivalent to taking more than 460,000 cars off the road. Now, while the original STRIDE bill successfully laid the foundation for this critical work, we've been challenged by our communities. We've been challenged by local government officials, and we've even been challenged by members of the General Assembly to get this work done sooner to improve the safety of the system. What this bill does is make a technical change to the STRIDE mechanism that will allow us to increase the pace of our work. The bill simply clarifies that the STRIDE surcharge resets with a multi-year rate plan in the exact same way that it currently resets with a traditional rate case. BGE STRIDE surcharge has reset every year and a half or so since we implemented STRIDE in 2014. This bill would allow that exact same process to continue and would support scenarios to accelerate our work by 5, 7, or even 10 years, subject to the PSC's review and approval. But without this legislation and the ability to reset the surcharge during the multi-year plan, BGE STRIDE work will not keep its current pace without hitting the cap and slowing our work. I know there is opposition to this bill, and you're going to hear questions about transparency. But what you really should know is that in a recent order, the PSC actually highlighted the transparency of STRIDE over other options for supporting this work. What you should know is that STRIDE is the subject of multiple annual reports, multiple annual hearings, and a third-party audit every single year. There's no more transparent dollar that BGE invests in our system than a STRIDE dollar. Where we truly disagree with the opposition is on the urgency to get this work done, which is what STRIDE supports, the acceleration. And to improve the safety of the gas system while delivering jobs and environmental benefits along the way. This is what STRIDE brings to the BGE system. And for these reasons, we support the bill and respectfully request a favorable committee report.
Are there any questions? All right, now we're going to an unfavorable. What is that? Brian Smith. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we do have one more favorable. Okay. Brian Smith.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Brian Smith here from Washington Gas in strong support of House Bill 890. In the interest of time and not to repeat the points made by Chairman Davis and Mr. Washington, I'll be very brief. I think first and foremost, just repeat the point that STRIDE is working. All 3 gas utilities in the state have approved second 5-year programs, and the work is focused on safety and ensuring the state has reliable, safe infrastructure. As of the end of 2019, WGL has replaced around 8,900 copper and bare steel services in our service-only STRIDE work, and about 86 miles of mains. At the current pace, we project completion of STRIDE work in our service area by 2035. To reiterate, my second point is gas utilities are already doing this transfer of surcharge costs to base rates in historic base rate cases, so that practice would not change with House Bill 890. The one thing that has changed, as you've heard this afternoon, is utilities are authorized to file multi-year rate plans. So House Bill 890 would simply update the original STRIDE law to align with multi-year rate plans. So with that, thank you for giving me some time, and we request a favorable report from Senate Finance.
Okay, are there any questions of this witness? Okay, we're going next to Tammy Bresnahan, AARP Maryland, for an unfavorable. You gotta unmute.
Gotcha. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Tammy Bresnahan. I'm the Director of Advocacy for AARP Maryland. And Chairman Davis is right. We're one of those people that have been here many times on this issue, and we are consistent. I do want to commend him on trying to replace the infrastructure and speeding that up, because it is important. We've had accidents in Baltimore City and around the state, and nothing is more dreadful than making sure that people's lives are safe. I use gas, and I want to make sure that mine is safe. We just want the industry to be treated like any other industry, that they should do the work first show their receipts, and then come back in. As you know, multi-year rates are a problem since they lock rate increases in. And when we have issues like pandemics and people become unemployed, $50 a month bill becomes even increased, like mine did from September until March, gas only. $50 per month hurts, and in some cases puts people on the street. So we ask that you think about this, and the industry should not be treated like any other, just like any other industry who is in the contracting business, that they should show the receipts, show their work, and we ask for an unfavorable. Thank you.
Okay, so it's not for the modality, it's the way that the pay is handled.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Joseph Cleaver, Maryland Office of People's Counsel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Joseph Cleaver for the Office of People's Counsel. Office of People's Counsel urges an unfavorable report on House Bill 890. This bill as amended would weaken the consumer protections that the STRIDE law provides. To understand what House Bill 890 does, it's helpful to think of STRIDE spending as a separate bucket of money from all the utilities' other costs. And I think this goes to Senator Hershey's earlier question and point. Under the STRIDE law, certain planned utility investments are eligible for advanced cost recovery in that they can be recovered from customers when costs are still estimated, and they go into a separate account. And the more spending that goes into that account or bucket, the greater the surcharge and the closer you get to the surcharge cap. Under the current version of the law, utilities can empty that bucket by filing a base rate case where all the money in that bucket goes into the general base rates where all the other investments are. And the benefit to utilities is because that bucket was just emptied, you can continue to do your STRIDE work, but you're less likely to hit the cap. You still get recovery of all the investments that had previously been in the bucket, but now they're in your base rates. But a key part of that process of emptying that bucket or account is that it represents the one chance for stakeholders and for the PSC to review STRIDE investments for prudency. At that point, in a base rate case, when you're shifting those costs from the STRIDE account into base rates, that's when they're reviewed for prudency. This bill would eliminate that review process for STRIDE utilities with multi-year rate plans, or MRP. To Senator Beidel's question earlier, MRP is a new kind of rate making that the PSC is testing on a pilot basis, where a utility can apply for up to 3 years of forecasted rates. And if the PSC approves such a plan after review, a utility's rates would automatically increase in 3 consecutive years. This bill says that for a utility with an MRP and a STRIDE program, that every year when those rates automatically change under the MRP, that STRIDE bucket gets emptied, but without that prudency review from stakeholders in the PSC. And not only will the bill impair the regulatory review process, it would remove transparency for consumers as to the amount of STRIDE costs presently in rates, because STRIDE costs would be mixed with all the other utility investments before a prudency review. The bill would also weaken the limitations of the cap, because in any given month, a utility could be collecting STRIDE costs from customers in excess of the cap, some through the surcharge and some through base rates by virtue of that automatic migration of costs from the STRIDE bucket or account into base rates. For these reasons, OPC urges an unfavorable report on House Bill 890. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for this witness? Okay, thank you very much. That ends the testimony on House Bill 890.
We'll vote at 2:30.
Okay, colleagues, we will have a voting session that will start at 2:30. So if you're in your places,